everybody, wait a minute. Well, everybody, wait a minute. Sunshine, sunshine. Well, everybody, wait a minute. Yeah, but everybody, wait a minute. Yeah, keep me right there. Everybody, wait a minute. Well, everybody, wait a minute. everybody, wait a minute.
They say when you wear Black Power Media gear, you can accomplish anything. You play any and every position. Coaching, to kicking, to receiving, to running and juking. And, oh my goodness, I see that again in slow motion. Get off me. And you're going to have a lot of haters coming at you, but what you got to do is you got to shake them off, and get to your goal and accomplish it. And when that's done, it's a beautiful thing. I'm talking about going hard, extra, for that extra point. And when it's done beautifully, you talking about touchdown. Oh, and the crowd goes wild and they're celebrating with you and everything. Man, let's see that again. Nice.
Black Power Media, baby. That's how we do it.
Now go to blackpowermedia.org and get you some of that gear. Empower yourself today. Yeah.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
Yes, yes, yes. What's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like right here on Black Power Media. I'm Jared Ball, joined by live and direct, on time, fresh and ready to talk about Roland Martin, Brother Diallo, Geechee, y'all. Everybody was on time today. Good God. It's good to see you. How's everybody doing?
I'm good.
Good to be in the house of the Lord one more time.
Right on, right on, right on. Let the church say amen. But yeah, peace to everybody in the chat. Welcome to all the remixers. To those who will see and hear this later, welcome to you as well. Please do continue to support the entire platform. And just a couple things I did want to get to before we get to the main meat of the meal. And by the way, Dr. Conadu and I are going to have to reschedule our museum trip. So stay tuned for that. So no rush this morning as had almost been intended. But just very quickly, I don't know how this is going to go down with everybody, but on some level, I gotta, because I'm going to come back and hate on them as usual in a second, but I feel compelled to at least do some balancing here to share. And Diallo, I'm just muting you for a quick second because I think there's some. I'm not sure what the noise is, but I think it's coming on your end. But just a second here. 7 U.S. senators ask President Biden to release Leonard Peltier. So this came through on PP News. Shout out to the Political Prisoners News Network, the newsletter I get through Freedom Archives, freedomarchives.org. But anyway, so and the claim at least here, Senators Tina Kanish, Mazie Hirono, Patrick Leahy, Edward Markey, Bernard Sanders, Brian Schatz, and Elizabeth Warren co-wrote the letter citing President Biden's steps towards addressing the wrongs committed by the U.S. federal government towards Native American people. So these are the senators that submitted a letter to President Biden requesting clemency for the American Indian Movement activist and Turtle Mountain Chippewa citizen Leonard Peltier. The letter comes a day before the 2022 White House Tribal Nation Summit convenes in Washington. At the Department of the Interior, earlier this year, the Democratic National Committee unanimously passed a resolution asking President Biden to consider clemency for Peltier. The White House has not released a statement on whether President Biden is considering granting clemency for Peltier. So, have you all seen this story? Any thoughts about this? Do we change our position on the Democratic Party? Is it now clear to accept the solutions offered by our dear Mr. Martin and his colleagues? What do you all think about that?
Nah, I didn't hear about it, but nope.
I mean, I think that Biden is I don't know. He's the reformed racist. I mean, he's the token master. I've started talking to him. I mean, his entire administration, as far as Black people has been concerned, is a lot. The optics are really good. I mean, he's just masterful at optics. So I wouldn't be surprised if he went ahead and at least gave lip service to it. Because just before the midterm, he was wilding out with debt relief and appointees, all these colored folks he's appointing to visible positions. I call Biden the token master because
I'm still remembering when he told Charlemagne that if you don't vote for him, we ain't black. And I also remember him being Storm Thurmond's homeboy. So he ain't never gonna outlive that for me.
Oh wow.
Strom in the building. I haven't heard a reference to I saw somebody who personally did me wrong yesterday on campus, and in my car to myself laughingly did refer to him as a devil. And for some reason, I haven't thought of it in that way since maybe the Strom days. Like Strom brings up that even for an atheist like me, that devil vibe.
But didn't he have a black daughter?
Yeah, that
Strom
makes it even
Thurmond
worse.
Had a black child.
He disowned her and sent her off into the world, not to be mentioned. And I think there was, if I remember, it's a long time now, but wasn't there some minimal support she got from him for this? Yeah.
You cut the check for her.
Yeah.
It's really not funny. He actually raped a child. You're
right. It's not funny. You're right.
He actually, Strom Thurmond raped a black child of 14. I believe the child was 14 years old. He raped her, and she gave and he raped the child. They had a baby, and that black woman was shipped off and given a check and some other provisions and sent away. But what was curious about that is she was a young adult while Strom Thurmond was filibustering the Civil Rights Act, one of the longest filibuster in U.S. congressional history. It just blows my mind that she could remain silent. I mean, she could have blew up one of the most overtly racist and vicious racist in the U.S. government at that time, which is saying a lot because there were a lot of overt racists in Congress at that time, including Biden. And the way she would sit on her hands, and she just sat silent when she had that secret bombshell for all those decades that could have been maybe somewhat an aid for black people. It just, that kind of always blew my mind. And then when she finally came public, nobody ever asked her that. Nobody ever really pressed her on that. Like, why you sit silent while your father was literally attacking your people, and you
answered your own question. I can't imagine the conflict she was under. I wouldn't have expected.
I guess. You're a father of daughters. I only have sons. My sons would snitch on me in a minute. Don't let me get out here saying nothing. My sons will go public, hashtagging, tweeting. See, that's what happens, I guess. You blessed with daughters. Like I'm not.
Maybe I don't know what it is, or maybe I'm just I don't know. I don't know. My oldest, I don't know. I think my oldest would be quick with it. I don't know. I think
You know, I
my
was just
youngest
watching
would go down with the ship, but my oldest would be like, nah.
daughters.
Tweak,
That-
tweak,
I've
tweak,
heard
tweak,
about.
tweak, tweak.
I just saw a interview with the son of the Oath Keeper that just got arrested for convicted for sedition. And
Oh,
he was
Lord.
just ripping into his father like my father's a monster. He said, "I'm safer. America's safer." When he was just going in, and neither
Oh,
of
wow.
of the daughters, the old eye patch guy, neither of the daughters were in the documentary. His daughters refused to be interviewed, but the son went on and just was like, "Yeah, my father's a monster. He had us eating oatmeal and dried apples, waiting for the apocalypse." Like, just went in on his father like my father's a madman. So
But I'm laughing, but I do agree with those who point out that underneath a lot of the white conservatism is these rabid Christians who want the apocalypse. Like they're trying to bring on that final event. They want this rapture to occur.
Yeah.
And that's why they support Zionism, and that's why, all of this other stuff. Like they're like, yes, let's go.
But let's
Oh,
let's not leave the brothers out of that. There's a lot of brothers
Okay.
with apocalyptic mentalities. A lot of brothers in the woods with AKs alongside them. There
A
were black
lot.
cowboys, black oath keepers. The Nation of Islam is waiting for Armageddon, and so is the Black Hebrew Israelites. That's an apocalyptic cult. So yeah, white boys.
But relatively speaking, I don't think that they have well, maybe I'm wrong on that. My argument has been they don't have the hold on Black America that the white version has on its side. But
Well, I was just reading a study about religion amongst white people in the U.S. and that's trending down.
but for Black people, it's going up. Is that what you're about to say?
Yes.
Oh Lord.
Globally and locally, we out Pope the Pope and we out Muhammad.
That's true. Dr.
So
Clark.
as Dr. Clark said, the apocalypse.
Look, I will say this: nothing brought more vitriol to my Instagram than when I simply posted the simple phrase, "I am an atheist." I did get like deletable stuff. Like I'm not here for it. Like it's not fair game for me. Like I'll quickly delete stuff, when people go too far with it. But there was a I don't know who was who, if they were black or if everybody was as black as they claim or whatever. But there was a lot of what I used to get as a kid. You going to hell versions of you going to you going to hell, boy. It's like, oh man. But just quickly, I see this question here from Quaker Anarchist, one of our strongest BPM social media supporters. And I'm not entirely sure. I'll look into this because I did just notice this morning that I got an e-receipt for my ongoing donation. So I'm assuming that was through freematulu.org. But let me double check on all of that. And if anybody else has information, please share it.
Hey, Jared, before we get too far, I almost forgot, and we don't have to play the video, but I do want to take the time to apologize to you.
Oh, that's right.
And also,
That's right.
and also the BPM chat for our display of whatever the hell that was last week. I mean, the week before last.
2 weeks.
Yeah. So we had anticipated to talk about the documentary and the conversation. The brother that came on from our study group, he avoided all contact with me before coming up to the show, and then when he commented on the show, it was kind of like I was actually as surprised as you, and we just pretty much fucked that whole session up. So
It's all good, man. I appreciate it. I honestly forgot, but if you do want to share the video, I'm happy to do that. If not, or you want to share it later, that's fine. We can do it now, later, whenever. This morning, whatever. But I honestly, I did forget. But I appreciate the apology. I personally I really didn't feel like it was necessary. It was an awkward moment, And I see that people in the comments had some fun with it, and my responses in particular. But I didn't feel it, but I get it, and I appreciate that you all felt the need to apologize, and I felt, and I appreciate that you feel, appreciative of the space and of our chat. So anyway, thank you very much. And
absolutely.
but I'm fine. I have no problem. And then just like I said, follow up. But let me know what we want to do with the video if you wanted to play it.
All right, bet.
By the way, Diallo dipping out. I don't know what happened. I did not do it, so I don't want to get all the accusations. There's a lot of Diallo love and support, and the people are quick to accuse me of something. I think he
froze.
Anything.
He froze for a second just now.
Okay. Well, just real quick, back on track here. To go back, to get back on what is the normal stance. And I actually do see this as a precursor to our discussion of Roland Martin's book. I haven't been around much to say much about this particular story, but I did at least want to acknowledge that I've been trying to follow it a little bit. And I can't help notice that as the rail workers in the country start threatening strikes, that now all of a sudden the Democratic Party wants to get involved and intervene and play a heavy hand, but of course to do what they always do, which is to shut down the interests of labor and end up supporting the corporations. So here come your all all our favorite people who House passes, the House passes legislation to avert economically devastating rail strike. Because of course everybody, the whole point of threatening a strike at this holiday season was to threaten everybody's Christmas and presents being and toys being delivered and all this other and whatnot and this and that. So that of course encourages the ruling elite to get involved. And here they come to say, we're going to exercise what is our right when it comes to something that might threaten the national economy, to get involved in the labor dispute. And of course, we're going to side against labor in defense of corporations, to basically say that the rail workers, the long story short is that the rail workers are going to get a pittance of, if anything, of what they wanted. And they're not going to particularly get the days off and the health care coverage and the extended leave that they were fighting for, because these fools are going to step in and boom. So as I see some in the chat saying, I agree. It's easy for me to say, relatively speaking, and as someone who Maryland state law prohibits from unionizing, the teachers and academic, the professoriate cannot unionize in the state of Maryland. I'm all for a strike. General, otherwise, targeted, whatever, however people want to get busy with it, I'm for all of it. And again, shout out to Dylan Rodriguez and others on strike out there and supporting the striking workers out there at the University of California. So anyway, just wanted to at least make some note of that, as again we start to look at the work of Roland Martin here this morning. I think it's appropriate to be reminded the extent to which we might see the Democratic Party operate. So on some level, I think it's fair to make note that a handful of Democrats have said free Leonard Peltier, and on the other hand, the ruling elite of the party have said labor is to be shut down and everybody get back to work.
Midterms is over.
Thank you. I'm sorry?
I said midterms are over. They don't, they'd be like, holler at us in another 2 years.
And we'll make you a promise that we're not going to.
They don't even have to act anymore. Yeah. They got it locked.
So, all right. So that said, let's if you all are ready, let's go ahead and we can get to the business of the day. And just so people are clear, we are endeavoring this morning to talk about the new book from Roland Martin, White Fear: How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. Roland S. Martin with Leah Lakins. I'll let either of you, get us started.
Well, two things I'm mad at up top. Like, he's interviewed and had Gerald Horn on his show a couple times, and it seems like Gerald Horn intently not correct Roland on any of the dumb stuff he said. He just kind of like pivoted and made another point. And your homeboy Greg Carr's on there, so he should be tight and rolling up too. But I mean, I think just to sum the whole damn book up, this guy is saying that white fear is white people will no longer be the majority, and they're gonna force to share power with African people, just like in South Africa. And then that more black politicians and more black media pundits like him and Charlemagne is gonna free us. And the way Roland sold this book as is like he's waiting to publish. He got all this heat that he gonna drop. He just was talking in circles the whole time. So
can I say something?
yeah,
I have an issue. I have an issue with our nomenclature. I don't understand black nomenclature because the way, like, if you got a rapist, a murderer, a bully, a thief, and you're discussing them or titling them, and you're going to talk about their fear and oh, this fear. What, like, we say supremacist, we say fear, we say fragility, we say privilege. What? Why do we name shit related to white people the way we name it? Why do we call shit the way we call it? It's like we just so scared to call these people what they are and to describe what they do. Like white fear, like of all the things he was skimming the surface on in the book, and then he concludes that I'm talking about these people's fear, not their predation, not their pathology, not their aggression, not their bloodlust. Why do we always say shit like white supremacy, white fragility, white privilege? And now we're going to start, did I say white frailty? And now we're going to start talking this white fear shit. Now I can see this shit starting to trend amongst, lettered Negroes, and then trickle down stupidity, where black folks, oh yeah, they fear. And these people are literally fucking black boots stomping across the globe, got nukes targeted at all of us and our mamas. And we're going to describe them, and when we refer to them as fearful people, the white fear instead of white pathology, white predators, white murderers, white rapists, white theft. We even call their colonization exploration, the age of exploration. So that's the first thing that ate me up digging into this book. It's just I had to keep talking about, and he kept talking about their fear. They murdered 1 million people. Their fear. Oh, they're taking all the resources. Their fear. They maintain control of all the major institutions. Their fear. What? I don't understand the nomenclature that we use when referring to white aggression, white pathology, and global white omnicide, this omnicidal race of people. Even you have people like Dr. Hartman, who literally calls white people a virus. He's a white man. And he's like, white people have conducted themselves as a virus or a cancer in relationship to all other cultures and nations on the earth. Even white boys come more with it. The cancer of whiteness or the pathology of whiteness. I don't understand the nomenclature. And it every time I saw that title, white fear, it just ate away at me.
I think at the risk of suggesting I can keep up with your question, I think this is the answer. As Roland Martin writes here very early on in the book, this book is a call for white Americans to take a hard look in the mirror and begin dealing with their own internal racial conflicts. It is designed to be a conversation piece for white Americans to start the necessary reprogramming of their thoughts, assumptions, and beliefs about this country, especially as it relates to race. It also sounds the alarm for white Americans to understand that the demographics and cultural norms of America are changing regardless of whether they are ready or not. Therefore, white Americans either need to face their bigotry and shift into the reality of a swiftly changing America, or be locked out of the reality of the new American dream. White fear is also a call to action for people of color to begin recognizing and stepping into new opportunities in entrepreneurship, corporate development, local and national leadership, and economic empowerment as the dynamics of power shift in this country. So I agree with your question, but I think that's in sum the answer, that his book is targeting white audiences, as is most of his work, despite its claims to blackness, and it's targeting an approach to the problem that will involve heavily white mainstream corporate commercial support, as is his perspective. This is how he gets invited to MSNBC. This is how he gets the advertising revenue that supports his own platform. This is how he has always addressed himself. This is, in fact, when he came to speak at Morgan State a couple of years ago, and I was in attendance. This is what encouraged our back and forth on Twitter. That as I tracked what he was saying in his speech to these black graduates, ultimately the underlying theme was find your white sponsor, find your way in a white corporate world that attaches you to that, and that is how you will find a sustaining safe space. So that would be my initial response, but I'll stop there for now. Obviously there's much more. Go ahead. Yeah.
Also he when he explained that he think that because white kids,
and I'm sorry, Geechee, my bad. Geechee, my bad. But yes, Ricky, and I just saw him on MSNBC maybe a week or so ago, or just before I left, so maybe two weeks ago. He still gets there. He was there plugging his book. He's invited as the constellation of black punditry, apparently, because I just saw it. Yeah, sorry, Geechee, please go ahead.
No. I was saying that he made a point that because there were white kids who grew up with a black president, they're more likely to call out their parents and call out their grandparents. And one, if I was ever speaking to Roly Poly, I would ask him, like, what does it mean to call somebody out? Like, and then when he had the time to speak to black people in the book, he just saying stuff like, let's go even harder and let's do this. And it's like he's making no points at all other than the concept of going harder. So whatever he supposedly doing now, just go harder with that. And, that's going to get us somewhere.
It's worse than that. And the thing about white kids, I did note the part where he talked about white kids need to talk to their white parents. And white kids are mad liberal until they get their inheritances. And did he forget the whole hippie generation? All these long-haired hippie white kids. What happened to the age of Aquarius? To the good white kids who were going to change the world and take over from their parents and do better than their parents in the 60s. Where are they now? Most of them are still alive. All of them that had the leather vest and the beads and the long hair and played the ukuleles on the greens and the Kent State protesters and the students for the Democratic Societies. White people have gone through this cycle so many times where the white youth, black people looking at the white youth that are willing to come to the juke joint and drink some of our grain whiskey and dance to some of our salacious blues music and read the Communist Manifesto. How many times are we going to go through this cycle of thinking the white kids are going to change things when they grow up and come and inherit their parents' wealth, inherit their parents' institutions, and then they go right back to become conservatives? Does he know how many cycles we've had of this? Oh, wait till these white kids, this long-haired, smelly white boy becomes 25, 30. I
almost ran over Medea Benjamin about 10 years ago in Washington, outside of WPFW. She needs to be careful riding that bike through the city streets. Because I literally almost, she came riding by, cutting me off. She almost got hurt. So stay safe, Medea, as you ride these streets, doing your code pinking.
Yeah, so
my bad, Geechee. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. I thought Geechee was jumping in. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's true, Ricky. It's true. Right outside of PFW, she almost caught it. I was like, wow, careful.
Speaking about conservatism, I think. Well, you said that he's still on MSNBC. I don't really see a lot of them other than when he pop up on YouTube. But he took shots at conservative news medias, and I wonder what y'all even think he is, what kind of media he is, because he always talking about this black independent owned. But
no, he's very clear. He even says somewhere in this book, again, he reminds us of how long he has been speaking truth to power and calling it like it is. He sees himself. And again, I don't know how much of it is performance or how much of it he really believes. And when you see him live, I have to admit, when I saw, and I'm thinking again of him showing up at our graduation a couple of years ago, he fully embraces who he is. So I don't know if he is legit or if he's fully embracing the performance. But he comes in, he had the gown on, he was rocking with the band, he loves the HBCU, and I'm gonna come back to that when he talks about HBCUs in this book.
Towards
But
the
he
end,
loves
yeah.
the whole.
Towards the
I mean,
end.
so yeah, I mean, but he believes that he is doing, like, he believes like this is like to him this is wretched of the earth. This is Urugu. This is blueprint for Black Power. This is everything
Listen
that
to
we
the
would
white
have.
man in America.
All of that. This is. I mean, I'm serious. Like, I don't know if he believes it, but that's how he presents the book. And just so we're clear, this I thought was funny. I just want to make sure everybody's
Jane
clear.
Elliott
So,
shit,
well, I just want to be clear, starting before even that how he defines white fear. So he's saying, I define white fear as the unwillingness to share power and resources and allow for the redefinition of America's morals, values, and principles. White fear is perpetuated by white Americans who are resistant to allowing America to live up to the promises of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. So he's so I don't know if he sees himself as doing like when Malcolm used to make reference to give us freedom or give us death, and in reference to the death, and if the white folks can have the Second Amendment rights, so can we. And I don't know if he sees himself as doing a sort of Robert and Mabel Williams reference to the Constitution and the amendments and all that kind of stuff, or if he really is like, these documents are our guiding light. But
yeah.
the evidence for what may be his beliefs is that he does come in to explain his approach to race and racism using the very Oprah promoted, everyone loves white woman Jane Elliott, who does, famous of the brown eye, blue eyes stuff and all this other kind of approach to the study of race. And since I'm here, I'll just keep going and just say one more of what my initial points were and problems with this book that I think situate how he approaches and deals with everything, and then we can, happily come back to all of it, is that he starts off with this thing about by 2043, no ethnic group will be the majority, in America. And that according to the Pew Research Center, by 2043, the growth trends among people of color will continue, and it is expected that less than 47% of the country will be white. So this is sparking a fear among whites that is causing the backlash that against progress made recently since Obama and with Obama and all of that we can come back and talk about. But this is where, and I just want to show one thing because I can't help it.
all those dashikis that he wear, he's never been to South Africa where white people are the minority.
So
can we get into what he said about?
Hold on real quick, because this is my point. This is a perfect segue. Because some of us have been making this point for a number of years, and I myself, in the vaunted pages of the Black Scholar Journal back in 2014, was making this very point about how this would be framed as we approach a point in the United States where white people officially become a numerical minority, but maintain all of the control of the land and the wealth and the resources and the military and the media and so on and so forth, to make the point that, yes, as I said here, shifting demographics have now promised to result in the United States becoming the next apartheid state by 2050. These demographic shifts will only be playing catch up to what has already been described as the de facto apartheid media system, where, as is soon to be the case in all other areas of lived experience, should have said lived experience, a dominant white minority controls the majority of resources. Today, fewer white people control more media with a pervasiveness, penetration, and with a capability of managing more public opinion and maintaining entrenched social inequity than at any other time in world history. This process, increasingly driven by the new media technology of the internet, affords its owners and the politics that govern ownership an increased concentration of consciousness shaping capability, which means in part that without revisiting or supporting existing vestiges of Black radical media traditions associated with mass-based political movements, Black America is likely to continue to suffer deteriorating political and social conditions. So my point is, and in referencing even the work of Joe Torres and Juan Gonzalez and others who were pointing to this in a media context and reporting to the work of the State of the Dream and United for a Fair Economy, who pointed this out in more explicitly, the shift that Roland Martin is reducing to one just about race that ignores class and coloniality has been described by some of us as resulting in the very real comparisons of an apartheid relationship or apartheid state that has and continues to exist in South Africa and Israel and elsewhere. All right, go ahead, fellas. Diallo, I think you were wanting to jump in. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, that's the first thing I thought. Well, like, as if white people have never ruled from the minority, you know, and there's some other, you know, conspiratorial things that came to mind, but y'all catch the part where he said that Germany, South Africa, and Rwanda were good role models and examples for the United States as to how to deal with their past atrocities. Rwanda, that's currently an agent and waging a proxy war against the Congo on behalf of the U.S. empire and corporations. South Africa, the rape capital of the world, highest inequality in the world, and all the broken promises, and he was saying basically the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was an atrocity unto itself, was a good example. And Germany, you know, were good role models that the U.S. could look to on how to appropriately come to terms with its many crimes and atrocities and history of slavery and Jim Crow. I'm like, is this dude crazy? Like, he didn't even go into detail. He just was like, yeah, we can just look at Germany, South Africa, and Rwanda. He wants those to be role models for the United States, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and he said that in one of my favorite parts also, just and I was trying to find the part you were talking about, but my for some reason the search thing in Kindle isn't working for me right now. But I did have this part as he's talking about solutions and what happens when this country is a minority country. However, some of the fastest he talks about, you know, that we need to look towards Africa and their fast growing economies. And that we can, and then he says, because, for example, many Americans have looked at majority Black and brown nations as third world countries. However, so now that we're going to be one of those, in other words, we're not a third world country, and we can now look at these parts of the world differently. No longer being a white majority nation forces us also to see nations in South America and in the Caribbean outside of the lens of colonialism. That is among the more telling and politically ignorant passages in the book, that somehow becoming more demographically looking like a colonized country means that those who were colonized and are neo-colonies are somehow freer than they realize because they are a majority. I mean, it is just, what he does in this book is really kind of remarkable in its upside downing of reality. All to conclude, by the way, that the Democratic Party is the solution. The progress that we were making under Obama needs to be revised and supported under Biden. And that he literally at one point says we need to be doing more of that. That white people need to have their conversations, and Black people need to be doing more of what we're doing, other than, as he pays some attention to, getting rid of the Black Republican, that little strain of Black Republicanism that's holding us back. There's no legitimate reference to anything politically left. There's no, let's even address ourselves to the Democratic Party differently. It's just keep doing what you're doing, and if white folks can address themselves to this fear, they'll be okay. But until then, as he says, he does say we're in a race war. So anyway.
that remind me of that when you I don't know if it was on something interview you had with Dhoruba about fighting battles that we already won, but he in the book, he was like, we have to be even more aggressive fighting the things that we're doing today, and then making sure that our children don't have to fight the same battles when, like, yeah, he's beyond himself when it comes to any kind of political understanding of anything. And again, I think, I wonder. I intently watched an interview with Gerald Horn, and like Roland said, like maybe 15 things that was just stupid that Gerald Horn would easily disapprove. And instead of saying something, like he just went around and made a point. Oh, I'm glad you made that point, and then he started talking about something else. And I wonder if, like, I haven't seen anybody like confrontational or anybody that will challenge him. And once you get an invitation to his show, like, I don't know if he ever.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
Dr. Umar went in on him when he was on the show.
Well, they try to ambush him. Like, I mean, he had like Umar and then everybody else ambushed.
He whooped their ass.
Yeah, he did.
But the Gerald Horn, I think, has humbly, I think he's gone too far with it. But he has an aversion to public confrontation with black people. So his thing is, if he fully disagrees with you, he'll just ignore you, and if he can find some value in you, he'll just run with that. And I tactically think that is flawed, but I've invited him to discuss this with me publicly and privately. He's just not interested in it. And I think again it works against his and our collective interests that he doesn't take certain positions on some of these public figures. But and I don't know which interviews you've seen with him on Roland, but I know Roland completely misinterprets Horn's work on the black press. And I've done even a video on that previously. I'll put the link in the show description if anybody's interested or whatever. But so like, I don't know, and I could easily see Horn showing up there. Like, I don't watch Roland Martin. I don't watch the platform anymore. So all I see are the headlines of what he does. So I don't watch it. Actually the last time I saw him in conversation was when he was on that MSNBC hit a couple weeks ago. I don't know what he did with Gerald Horn, but I just suspect that Horn would have found lanes to find something of value to say, and then leave it at that. He wouldn't have wanted to engage. Yeah. Go ahead.
Much of what Roland Martin said was couched on the white fear being bred by their losing their majority status.
Correct.
But he never explained why they had ongoing. But then much of the atrocities and crimes and oppression dated back to when white people were a solid majority. They were a solid majority. He never explained that, okay, if they're losing their shit now because they're soon to become a minority in the United States or no longer the majority, why were they acting the exact same way and conducting the identical behaviors when they were a solid majority? If this shit had anything to do with their relative numbers in society. Also, what he kept referencing that their birth rates are not keeping pace with their death rates, and the opioid crisis reducing the white life expectancy and all that. But what he never pointed out is white people never maintained their majority status through reproduction. They always did it through, number one, immigration, targeted immigration, and redefining who was white and what whiteness was. And both of those tactics are readily available to them, especially since now we have another expanding Central European and Eastern European war and great levels of resource crunch in Western Europe, and expanding austerity in research in Europe, which will cause an influx of white people seeking to come to the United States and immediately getting that I hate that word white privilege, so I'll never say it again. White pathology and their status as white people. So even his founding premise, he didn't really explain it in terms of why were white people, when they were a solid majority, behaving the way they do.
No, that's a really good point, and I would only want to add quickly to that I think in the racialized sectors, that these invitations to whiteness that those of us who are increasingly being defined as multi and biracial are getting. I think the narrow nationalism of the reverse hashtag movement in our communities is part of, again, a fracturing and a narrowing of a broad-based Black politics, all making it easier for whites to increase their numbers by redefining other groups and incorporating, as you've said. Absolutely, I think that's a great point.
Yeah, and he doesn't address that at all, if that's a concern, because like you said, white people have no issue ruling from the minority. And he even described in certain instances how the Republican Party is ruling and sustaining power from a numerical minority.
Exactly.
And he even pointing out that the whites, the white Republicans haven't gotten a majority vote. The Republican Party has been ruling from the minority for several election cycles, and one way they did it is through the judiciary, through flooding money into politics and ruling over the judiciary, lifelong appointments in the judiciary. So, I mean, in his own book, he kind of undermines, gives you the equipment or the information you need to kind of undermine or pull out the foundation of his arguments in the same book. You can use the book to debunk the book.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Go ahead, Geechee. My bad. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was about to ask you, did you catch the that point about Bill Clinton? He seemed like he's saying that Bill Clinton tactically used language to appeal to white America, that he was tough on crime.
Yeah.
It's almost like
he acted like that was a trick that Bill Clinton was playing. Like Bill Clinton used that as a tactic, as if Bill Clinton wasn't the chief mass incarcerator. What did Hillary
Arkansas
call us?
Oh,
super predators.
Super predators.
Super predators. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
I laughed out loud. Like he's like, yeah, that was a tactic. That was a trick that he used to get in office, as if it wasn't a foundational policy with his omnibus crime bill that Bill Clinton was a mass incarcerator. He didn't just pretend to be one because white folks.
Because look, again, this was in that ill-fated debate that I and Glenn Ford had at the Real News Network with Michael Eric Dyson. One of the points, maybe the only point that I made that was of any value in that whole exchange was that I was saying that the reason Dyson was writing his critiques at that point of Cornel West in the version it was at that point, and writing his defense of Hillary Clinton and others, was that this is how you sustain your celebrity, and that elite academic punditry pipeline and financial pipeline, that you have to constantly remind Black audiences of the value of the ruling elite in the Democratic Party. And this is how I read what you're talking about in Roland Martin's book. This was him saying, look, I expect another election cycle, again, attaching this need in the Black commercial press to that Democratic Party money that comes during each election cycle, attaching himself to that MSNBC invitation money and celebrity that he gets, that keeps him relevant. Look, as my former dean in the School of Journalism at Morgan State said, the superstar of the Black press for all those years, and a columnist in USA Today, he used to talk about all the time on his way out, that he said, as soon as my column in the USA Today ends, I'm going to lose relevance to everybody from the Clintons on down, even though he had done a biography on the Clintons. And even though he had done all of this pro-democratic, he understood, once my column is gone, I'm not relevant to them anymore. So Roland Martin, when I read what you're talking about, and when he's talking about how Hillary Clinton, remember how Hillary got more working class votes than Trump, and all this other kind of stuff, he's saying, look, I'm plugging myself back in. So even as I'm talking about white fear, and even as I'm talking about truth to power, and I'm this loud Black, seemingly Black performative voice, I'm attaching myself with allegiance to you, so that he says, as he says, and I had just pulled up here, because he does that slick thing of making references to John Lewis and Dr. King, and then, all so that he can come back and say, as he does right here, if we truly want to honor the legacy of champions such as John Lewis, we would be more serious about mobilizing, organizing, and voting to kick out the very people in Congress and state capitals and in county commission courts who are denying people their rights as Americans. So again, because as I said at the beginning, he has no class analysis, he has no radical analysis. He can make references to the very revolutionary Dr. King and reduce him to voting for Democrats so that he can represent John Lewis as a legitimate continuation of Dr. King, which Lewis was not. Quite the opposite, in fact. So that he can position himself, that is Martin, as speaking some sort of radical politics to his black audience when he's really writing to whites. So the last thing I'll say before turning it back over is that this goes back to his whole thing with the browning of America. And going back to the mid 2000, like 2010 and 11, this was what I and others were saying was a problem when people like Steve Stout were coming out and talking about how hip hop had tanned America, and how Jeff Chang and others were saying hip hop had produced the cultural context in tanning America for a Barack Obama, which is some sort of advance. So here comes again Roland Martin's ability to depoliticize the browning of a colony and say this is power, this is progress. And we just don't need to take better advantage of it by getting rid of black Republicans and voting for more Democrats.
I mean, can we really blame him? Because a lot of actual militants and radicals have really embraced this whole quantity over quality in terms of black people. If we could just get numbers up. I see that a lot amongst the reactionary anti-abortion people, where they're talking about oh yeah, we need black babies. They just throw black bodies at this machine. Just throw as many black bodies into the meat grinder until we clog up the gears. And and that's not going to work. It's just not. All those numbers, you just like that's not how liberation is secured or entrenched oppressive institutions are upended.
There's a point in this book when he started talking about Black Wall Street, and then he insinuated that we would have been able to build generational wealth had it not been destroyed.
He said, "Imagine, dream a little dream."
Look.
He said, "Imagine what America would look like if they hadn't raised black." So dream a little dream of black capitalism. That's all.
But then he the dates. I don't know if it was a typo, but he was like, it was the destruction in 1923 of Black Wall Street, and as Jared always brings up the point. One of the worst things that I always say was whenever the brothers was organizing to go to the jail to protect the black Dick Rowland, the rich people, I don't know if it's Adams or O.W. Gurley, was like, "Nah, don't go down there. Let the courts handle it." That was tragic. And I know Jared talked about how public policy destroyed. And I'm surprised Rowland didn't say, well, the reason why it was destroyed through public policy is because black people wasn't voting in, or, Black Wall Street wasn't voting and stuff. And it's always because that's kind of what he goes back to. We need to change things, and we're gonna fight this fear at the ballot.
But I'm always going to credit Black Myths and Too Black with a lot of this. But to be fair, even to Roland, one of the reasons he doesn't know is because nobody talks about what really happened. Right. When I went into a supportive role with Too Black around the circulating black dollar and the Black Wall Street mythology, just looking into the research, academic or otherwise, there's very little said about what really went on there, and you have to read deep into sort of the weeds of people's work to find more obscure or work that is obscured by very popular presentations of the history, which all always say the same thing. Black people were chilling, were living in Wakanda until, if it wasn't Namor and his people flooding it out, it was the rich whites doing it. And nobody looks at Wakanda, and nobody looks deeply and says, well, how was that economy actually set up? Who was delivering the supplies that everybody was eating and living off of in Wakanda? Who was building the homes that they were living in? Who was supplying the services that they were all living off of? What was the exchange currency? What was the exchange? What was being used? And what was this? Nobody was looking into that. So just as Two Black helped us unearth, and I'll put the links in here again as well. The Black Wall Street was like 5% of the black community was living off of a black capitalist fantasy. Everybody else were poor workers living off of
Atlanta.
a broader white oil economy.
Atlanta.
And then to your and I hear you.
Don't stop talking about Atlanta now.
But then, PG County down the street from me, the federal government version of that. And at the end of the day, it was they want to be able to focus on what is horrific in and of itself. I'm not trying to diminish it, but it's easier to say the white rednecks came in here and messed us all up. So you don't have to deal with the fact that because even after that they rebuilt and Black Wall Street was bigger and stronger by the 1940s, and then the federal government and its relationship came in with the business elite and wiped it all out, which is what happens everywhere. That's the situation that they can avoid because they want to be in allegiance with that. It's the Democratic elite, the ruling. It was the Nancy Pelosi's of their day. It was the Clintons of their day that did that, and that's who they want to team up with now. And it makes an accurate analysis impossible. So again, as much as I have, I make fun of Roland, and he gives it to us as well. Like he's no wallflower or whatever. And then he goes and he gets real slick, and not that this is, of course, why he's doing it or the only reason, but he goes and hires all my former colleagues and friends. It's a whole rack of them over there, and I'm like, come on, man, the coincidences are crazy. But Jason Nichols. I mean, there's a whole rack of them over there. I
seen one of my homeboys on the show the other day with Rashad Staten. So. Yeah, he's snatching up the blacks.
But Jason, with all due respect, like me and Jason shared an office for a while. And he's in that political lane. That's where he and I have always disagreed. We're clear on that. Like Jason and I, we're clear on that. But yeah, anyway,
I was having this conversation in Charlotte, and I brought up, ironically, what Jamil Hill shared recently, and that got people talking about. And one of the brothers was like, "Well, why we always got to compare ourselves to white people?" And then the next sentence, he was talking about Black Wall Street. I was like, well, what do you think Black Wall Street is comparable to? And he just got quiet. I was like, because ironically, like we don't know. And then I asked him, like, well, how much you think the white milk was versus the black milk in Black Wall Street? And so it's always ironic where we try to pivot away from comparing ourselves to white people. Then the things we celebrate the most is this direct comparison to white people. So.
That's all right, because I know I haven't had a chance to see it yet, but I see that Ye went on with Alex Jones, so I'm sure they solved everything in that conversation.
That was some good
hey,
shit.
wait, listen.
That was some primo shit.
Hey, Diallo, I got
wow.
I got a confession, Diallo. I got a confession. You might not like me after this, but I live off of hand-me-downs. My family be just giving away shit. Right. My aunt gave me away some Yeez, what is it? Yee Reeboks, man.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, man. I think I'm going over to the other side, bro. I got the Illuminati that inboxed me, and now I got some Yee sneakers.
Oh shit.
This shit is over.
No, I have no problem with free or bootleg Yee shit. I have no issues with it. Get it free or get it bootleg, So you still solid with me. Right, I do have some other issues, but can we talk about sidebar?
Yes.
How he completely lets Obama off the hook?
Oh, no question.
Can you
it's not letting him off the hook. He's praising Obama.
I remember, and he's just acting like he's behaving as though Black Obama was the only Obama's blackness. What did he say? Oh, he said Black Power, 8 years. Obama's presidency represented 8 years of Black Power.
Because
You
he's
get that
quoting
part?
Ta-Nehisi Coates. He was quoting Ta-Nehisi Coates' reference and title of the same thing. That's the point, that we were
he
8
said we were
years in power.
8 years.
no,
of power.
yeah, he said 8 years in power. But Roland
No, I'm saying
said
I know. I got you. Go ahead.
it
Yeah.
was 8 years of black power.
Yes.
And I don't know if y'all also saw this. Nowhere in the book does he mention capitalism or neoliberalism.
I was looking.
No,
for
that's
it.
what I'm saying. He has no class politics. That's
like
what that's
I did like 3 word searches. I'm
Yeah.
like, he doesn't mention capitalism at all.
Not
No,
man.
I just wanted to double back. Let's come back to that. I just wanted to share so folks see that we're not misquoting him. But when you've had 8 years of black power threatening to continue to upset the status quo of white America, such and such and such and such and such and such. No question. He was, that's what I'm saying. You said he gave him a pass. He was caping for the dude. He was, because his point is Biden is the continuation of that. Anything to the left of Biden is irresponsible. I'm getting my MSNBC check, my advertising check. I'm getting my lane protected. I've got, and I wear my dashikis. I got my HBCU professor. I got my black pundits. I got my women. My black women economists have their own show. What is it? Sunday mornings promoting the same. So he's. We're winning, and the only thing holding us back, and that was the point to even how he uses the Black Wall Street history. The only thing holding us back is that every time we make these progressive steps, white folks get scared, and then they come back at us with conservatism.
Wow. Well, the thing is, and I hate, bless white folks' heart. I just can't, I got to defend these. I got to do some Uncle Ruckusing for a moment. Because he said the white folks just went batshit insane because Obama was black and was president. And totally just did not.
It just started.
None of
it just started. White folks were good up until 2008, right. Diallo.
He's like, black man in office, let's go crazy, let's get nuts. As if, because if I, every day I wake up and I pray to the Lord, don't ever, because I could see, man, I would be hella good at Candace Owens. Candace Owens, really good. I could really get up here and make some real money. But, my ethics and morality just don't allow me. But he did not in any way mention the recovery. He touched on the economic recovery coming out of Bush's financial markets and financial collapse and housing collapse. How Obama rescued the U.S. economy by shoring up the very institutions that collapsed the economy, abandoning the working class, neoliberal austerity politics. So if I was a redneck and I wanted to find reasons to hate Obama, just a poor redneck, and I wanted to find reasons to hate Obama outside of his skin color, there were a plethora of reasons to hate Obama as a working class. And I know he got mad about the working class Americans, but I'm using it in the context of the book. The working class meaning white workers. They had several reasons. And I would imagine that if Roland Martin wanted to really be a serious author, a serious thinker, a serious public journalist or intellectual, he would have at least pretended to acknowledge the fact that Obama neoliberal policies paved the way for Trump more so than simply his skin color, simply his baritone, Al Green voice. It's a little more than that. It's quite childish in the way he played Obama to be this figure, this ominous figure that drove, because Negroes been in high positions in this country for quite some time.
So you listen. You mean to tell me Joe Wilson yelling out "you lie" is not evidence of white fear? Is that what y'all trying to tell me?
That's actually white bravery. If
the point of your book,
call the book white anything,
if the point of your book, if the ultimate point of your book is that the Democratic Party is the solution, then you can't do what you're saying, Diallo. You have to present Obama and Biden as the forward path that is only being disturbed by this recalcitrant handful of black Republicans and a whole bunch of white fear. But because we're about to be a majority-minority country, we now are somehow, by that in and of itself, have overcome a colonial status and somehow circumvented neocolonialism and have moved right all into freedom. So he has, again, if you wipe away class, if you take away ideology, if you take away issues of redistribution, which is the point I want to get to when he brings up in a quite, I think, in an upsetting way, the HBCU and the case in Maryland. This is where, to me, the mask of fraudulence comes fully off. But I think that's mostly because of my biased and limited experience as a faculty member at an HBCU for the better part of the last 2 decades. So I admit my bias, so that's why I keep saying I want more people to go to imixwhatilike.org and participate in our, in my still ongoing HBCU, Not a Different World project. Let your voice be heard, because, but anyway, but Geechee, I think you wanted to say something before I launch into any of that.
I also thought it was ironic how he glossed over like the Civil War, and he threw the radical Republicans out there. He never really named Democrats being Confederate. But I wonder, before we get accused for tearing down a black man for publishing a book, any positive things y'all got from this brother's book? Any maybe a thumbs up on anything that he said, did?
I appreciate him attempting to push the narrative that white folks are afraid of us. I mean, it's just good to, like he said, imagine, dream a little dream. I'd like to sometimes pretend that white folks, but as a black man who was literally born and raised on the Missouri-Kansas border, Midwestern, family came up from the South, I have to tell y'all, black people, white folks not scared of y'all. And I know y'all big city white folks, y'all New York, San Fran, Atlanta white folks, y'all come on to the Oklahomas, y'all come on to Kansas, y'all come on down to Missouri, y'all go on to Arkansas. These white folks ain't scared of y'all. It's an absurdist.
I have to co-sign that. And my experience did not come from being, because I was raised around what I would consider to be the scary, cowardly white folks. The white folks Diallo's talking about, not all sophisticated. There's a lot of poor folks around here, but they just not around where at least in my class level they were. But they're not. It's relative, and they're not the go hard that I came to meet in the military. And those real white folks that Diallo is talking about, they're not afraid. They are the white version of I wish a motherfucker would. Exactly. They just can't wait.
Listen, we gotta
here messing with Woody Allen. Get away from the big city. Let me tell you something.
Hey, listen. So there's a phrase.
Come to Kansas City.
There's a
shit. You can even go to Boston. Go to South Boston. They're not messing around. They don't give a shit.
Hey. Oh my God!
Listen. So there's a phrase that explained. We said Buckers like to taste blood in their mouth. So they like the taste of their own blood.
They have no problem with it. I met a few of them, man. Them hay tossing white folks, them farm strong field hands. They can't wait.
Cow flipping cousin fuckers.
Cow flipping, cow tipping, all that shit. All of that. Absolutely. Diallo was 100% right about that. There's a lot of us out here have been spoiled. White folks been spoiled.
I had to come to the south side of Chicago for safety. I had to get the hell out of the Missouri. Let me tell you, that's just, I mean,
no doubt.
He gonna get some black people in trouble.
White
folks afraid of us. But that's my favorite part of it. And for a moment, I was like, yeah, maybe they are scared of us.
Look,
and you look on social media at these white folks like Karens. I just saw a video of this white woman. It was a brother. He was a parking lot attendant, and the white woman was bum rushing him, talking about "Get out of my face! I'm afraid!" and running full speed at this dude's neck. A big black man, twice her size. She's running full speed at his throat, talking about, "Oh, help me, somebody!" So yeah, they feign fear. But let me tell you something. And listen, that's a game. That's a hustle. That's a trick.
It is. That's
They
it.
know,
That's the
they
new
know.
side war right there. Karens are a
Right.
side war. You absolutely. We have never been in more agreement than on this issue right here, Diallo.
So-
That right there.
Stop
Good
playing.
God.
Rolling gonna get some black people hurt. Tuck
Other
your chains,
than
black people, tuck your chains in, because it ain't that type of car.
And that's why you got to double back, and to the point I was trying to make a little while ago, and give more respect to what Dr. King and them were doing.
Right.
And because Dr. King wasn't just saying let's support this ruling elite, he was walking through those wildernesses,
Right. Yeah.
saying we want real power, and that's like, come on, man. So Roland is playing the game. I think you're right about that. You make a good point, and I hope people do not take him too seriously on this issue of how afraid white folks are, because they're not. They're perfectly fine with. They've been a ruling minority for forever, so
Yeah,
they're fine with that.
globally.
They haven't.
But
Right.
I mean,
Exactly.
his fair trick bag is all rooted in like success in some kind of economy. So starting a black business is making him. He not asking people to be confrontational now. Like he not gonna ask.
So this brings me. So I want to make sure to get this in.
He
and then we can.
is confrontational in the book. He is like, just step aside, white man, because this is a tide in 20 years. And what do you say, 2043? We coming, whether you like it or not.
Step aside.
But what he leaves out.
Step
But
aside meaning
the circle. That book is sassy as hell.
no. Step
It is
aside meaning we gonna have more LLCs next year.
Yes.
That's
And
But what
there's
he
nothing
leaves
you
out,
can do about it.
But what he leaves out is all of the class and the actual economic analysis. So he says that by 2043, white folks will be a racial minority, but he leaves out the fact that by 2053, black wealth is going to be zero from whatever half of point percent that it is now is going to hit full zero by 2053. So you could they are happy to have an apartheid state, whether whether in South Africa or here in the United States or in Israel and Palestine. So
And they're already setting up for that scenario with that whole build a wall thing. That was just testing the waters.
Yeah.
You got researchers and people who look at city infrastructure and civic infrastructure, like James Howard Kunstler. They talking about setting up fortress cities.
Yeah.
Where the city will be automated, ran by AI and automated machines, and they don't even need workers, and they won't even allow you into and out of.
We already got gated communities.
Right. These
we already
green
got.
zones.
Yeah.
And they can generate their own power. There's already parts of Atlanta just instituted a curfew. Chicago just instituted a curfew and literally shut downtown shopping district and the museum district off from black youth. The black youth are down here just wilding. They're wilding. And every time there's a hockey game, white folks go over there, drink beer, and tear up downtown. You never see it on the news. But they're already setting up this fortress city and these fortress infrastructure where parts of America will be automated, green, and progressive, and modernized, and the hinterlands of the U.S. and the vertical farms. It's like they're setting up the technology and the infrastructure. We thought Elon Musk lied and said they're going to fly to Mars and create sanctuaries for rich people, but they're doing that within the major cities right now.
Well, Hakeem Jeffries is going to give us political power, so I don't know what y'all complaining about. We got
and as Roland Martin is saying here, we already have HBCUs, and he's going to get them more funding. So
$1 billion.
And again, he exposes his class bias. Again, very clearly in this chapter on a number of occasions. So I'm just going to point to a couple of them real quick. One, as he says here very explicitly, HBCUs have graduated more black PhDs than white PWIs, including Harvard. They've done more, and then as he says specifically here, HBCUs have also been one of the biggest engines for African Americans to move into the middle class. So now, because he avoids any actual analysis of class and of the economic condition of black people, he doesn't have to explain what that means or what that means relative to the rest of the community, or what does that mean in terms of maintaining, if they're moving into a middle class, how is that maintaining a so-called lower class and protecting an upper class? He doesn't go into any of this kind of stuff. He can avoid all of that by just these simple, vague hosannas to HBCUs that continue to get him high-paying gigs to speak at convocations and stuff like that. Like that's not an unpaid visit. It's not necessarily a low-paid visit. But it also just shows you, but then specifically when he comes to something that I'm a little bit familiar with and have been paying attention to and even somewhat affected by, he makes reference to the 2021 case where Maryland HBCUs were finally awarded $577 million to be distributed over 10 years, but only after a 13-year battle with the state. Long story short, whether it involved duplicating programs or offering really one way of reading it is that it was a case about protecting the distribution of both white funding and indirectly or directly white students by having programs that were previously only available at HBCUs being duplicated at PWIs, taking away funding, taking away white student base. So I remember during one presentation at Morgan, it was showed that since somewhere in the 1970s, white student population at Morgan had plummeted by more than, I think, 50%. So it reminded me that at one point, and still to this day, there is a healthy need both for white students physically to be there, and of course the money they bring and the funding they bring more broadly by having programs that they can't get in other elements of the University of Maryland system. But more to my point for this morning, and that whole case, to a point my dear brother just made to me yesterday, deserves a whole lot more attention. More to my point of what Roland Martin does and does not do in his anti-class or non-class analysis is that he ignores the distribution of those resources and the power within the HBCU. And what does it mean then for HBCUs to have more funding and more resources and the ability to produce more nominally, at least to produce more black graduates of any or another kind? What does that mean in terms of the protection of a neo-colonial elite, of a neo-colonial relationship to the broader state, to the broader curriculum, to the reproduction of more class or non-class analysis that akin to what we see in Roland Martin, so on and so on and so on. Like, that's never brought up. So just like, and then I'll stop here, just like as a microcosm of what his broader book is arguing in terms of black engagement with politics, media, investment, business, etc., is that it's an advocacy for a handful of a black ruling elite, a middle class, to benefit from deals made by having popular punditry and argumentation and even academia and journalism point black people away from radical traditions, away from critical questions, away from different approaches, and it encourages, as Martin does say, more of the same. So, anyway.
So more debt, get more debt, go to HBCUs. Just get that.
Or to the extent that that's the only way to get into a middle class, or still the best way for black people to make it to the middle class, to not raise questions about what that means. Or to not encourage black students with that relative privilege to do something else in return to their community. There's not that kind of argument. He takes the very traditional, and what has become an increasing problem for me personally, this very narrow and conservative black defense of HBCUs as if they are some radical institutions, when in many ways they suppress the kind of movements and efforts that would would make the world better for all black people and everyone else, for that matter. So it becomes, again, it's like his defense of HBCUs is no different than his defense of black entrepreneurialism or black capitalism or the black ruling elite in the Democratic Party. It's the same thing, and I'm watching firsthand where Morgan's money gets privileged as it gets awarded and or given in reparations to, and most of it is public record, so people can go see for themselves where that money ends up. And that's why when I saw that white administrator yesterday getting in his car, I was like, you lied to my face. Not that we should be surprised. And I see people in the chat, say, should we be surprised? It's not about being surprised, but it's about acknowledging it when it happens. You know what I mean? I'm not necessarily surprised when the sun comes up, in the morning, but I like to acknowledge that it has happened. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you lied directly to my face. And we're just having this moment of looking at each other as you get in your car. And I'm like, and it's just one of those moments where it's like, so what you going to do? Nothing. I'm just going to start laughing in my car in my powerlessness, because I'm not going to do nothing. Come on my YouTube show and complain about it. That's what I'm going to do. But anyway, that's anyway. Anybody else? I think Diallo, let me unmute you, Diallo. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to say that was the founding charter mission of HBCUs, was to create a black buffer class, and that's why they got so much money from the white establishment, white elites, and white institutions. And I don't think they've strayed from that path. But what I wanted to also point out, which kind of blows my mind, just to get inside the mind of old Roland Martin, is he the guy that used to wear the ascots?
Yes, he used to sell them. He used to have his own brand.
Yeah, I don't know this guy as well as I saw him doing some frat boy dance, and I saw him going head to head with Umar back in the day. That's all I know, because I don't really follow these status quo Negroes. But in his book, on more than one occasion, he laid out the delusions of white people, that delusions and illusions that white people had about black people rising to prominence. Like the one part where he was talking about the cities and how the election of the black mayors, and how America was divesting from rural America, and black people were getting all the jobs, and black people were getting all the welfare, and black people were just this major force in America. And he acknowledged that was a white delusion, that white, through the right-wing media, had promoted to them. Blacks are taking everything. But then in the same book, and sometimes in the exact same chapter, he would turn around and sell those myths and delusions of black people being a rising economic power. So how did he both point out the fact that white people had this delusion or this myth that black people had more status and power in this system than we actually had, and then turn around and promote the idea that black people do have, or have the great potential, and will eventually get the status and power? That, kind of shook me, that someone could, both denounce a delusion and sell the same delusion in the same book.
It's wow, right.
And another point, he talks about how white people start to bug out, Tea Party it up, and MAGA it up because of the ravages of capitalism. He talked about, everything from outsourcing and divestment and hyper exploitation of the white masses by the white elites. He points that out, but then he literally describes in several points the ravages of capitalism without mentioning capitalism. He's like, yeah, these things sent white people into a tizzy, and white people are going through this, the Sackler family and the opioid crisis. And he keeps talking and describes in relatively good detail the ravages of capitalism without ever calling out capitalism.
Well, I just want to, just so we're accurate, and I did, because I thought the same thing, but I did
It's
want
one
to
time,
confirm
yeah.
with my
Oh, it's
Kindle
in
word
there.
search.
I missed.
He says that the entire American economy was built on this notion of slavery that created the foundation for American capitalism.
Yeah.
That is the one mention of it. So he would be able to say Diallo is a liar.
Yeah,
But the,
I lied. Lying is
but the
fun.
problem is, of course, he's not offering. To your point, it's not an analysis of capitalism, obviously, and he doesn't ultimately blame capitalism as a problem. And when people, even when they say the phrase American capitalism, it's again, to me, a way of them saying, look, there's this little slight flaw with the way America did it, but it can be
How
corrected,
it got started.
or and we can, but it's not, it's not like it's just, your analysis is correct ultimately. It's just that we wanted to be clear that and yet, I see folks asking about this December announcement. I'll let us finish up here, and I'll come to that.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I almost forgot about that. It was a point where he talked about some of these black athletes being an immediate threat to America. But I actually haven't heard
They daughters.
Yeah, I haven't heard him say anything about Kyrie.
No.
And I mean, again, I don't watch him, but I haven't heard him say anything about this threat that black athletes bear, especially.
Lock up your
Yeah, I
daughters.
mean, he talks about black athletes standing in resistance, but it's more, if I remember correctly, and I'm just looking quickly at it again, but really what it was more as an aesthetic, symbolic thing, like you see Jesse Owens running and white supremacists feel
Oh,
threat,
yeah.
like they're like, oh, black people are this and that, but it's not. But even again, it would be no different than the sort of standard, either black athletes are doing their part or they're not doing enough, as opposed to what is it that we're really supposed to expect from them, and then what is it that you're really asking them to do? Because as I think Roland Martin would have been largely satisfied, they picked up the call when Obama called them and told them to stop threatening to strike and go back to work. So that's what you wanted, Roland, because that's what brought us Obama to be in position to be one to be sought for counsel when NBA players at least considered some sort of collective action. So that's sort of my point. Like, what when you bring up capitalism in passing, or you bring up Black Wall Street, or you bring up black oppression and racism, what is the reason? And the real reason is to give us, I think, not much of an analysis and marching orders that are quite acceptable to the Nancy Pelosi's and whomever else's are up there or will be there in the next cycle. So,
And can I point out that he doesn't understand what scapegoating means? He wanted the white people. He said that when white people get in trouble, that they should scapegoat the industries, the corporations, and the politicians, the Republican politicians that screw them over, instead of scapegoating black people and immigrants and Muslims.
Oh.
And that also kind of bugged me. Like, it's not scapegoating if you target the actual source of your
right.
Whoa. And he was like, instead of scapegoating immigrants and instead of scapegoating blacks, they should scapegoat the government, Republicans. I'm like, it's just, I try to read it because he said it was for white folks. It was a book for white folks. And I tried to read it from a white point of view. And I'm just like, I don't know. It's as a white person reading that. One moment he's telling us, telling them to talk to their parents. Young people, white folks, talk to their parents and say, yo, dads, cut out the racism, boomer, and then the next minute he's telling white people to scapegoat the Republicans instead of scapegoating black people. It's kind of all over the place.
Yeah, no, you're right. If you think of it, I hadn't really thought of it quite that way. If you think of it as trying to read it through the eyes of a white reader, the first thought I have is, why would I pick up the book? Like, who you know, or if I'm looking to Roland Martin for solutions to my problems or my community's relationship to this problem, like what, you know, but the idea, yeah, you're right, you know, dad, man, you know, come on, dude,
Yo,
stop the
he
racism.
gives solutions. He gives some old rusty butt recycled solution. I mean, he's literally calling for affirmative action, desegregation. You know, it's just the old, same old,
Yeah,
same
support
old.
HBCUs, support black businesses.
HBCUs, black
Yeah.
LLC.
Yeah.
I've come to call this whole component of the black community prosperity politics, and
Yeah.
it picked up where because prosperity gospel has kind of fallen off, and now you have prosperity politics, and the only people that really, just like the prosperity gospel, the ministers and the church administrators got rich while the masses lost ground. And in this prosperity politics, the black leaders or the leading blacks are getting resources and status while the masses continue to lose ground. Just, you know, this economic salvation is really just, it's coming in so many ways. And so it used from the reparations movement to the LLC cult, that's all it is that's what he's really selling for black people, and just telling white folks there's an unstoppable tide of black and brown people that they just have to accept for no other reason. It's inevitable.
Do any of y'all know who this Leah Lackins lady is who wrote him I guess she edited or helped the book with the book?
I don't.
I didn't look into that.
And I didn't look into it either. Now that you mentioned.
Oh yeah, she do stuff with. She's like with Steve Harvey. I guess she helped Steve Harvey write a couple books too. So
she's she's the ghostwriter or the one who takes
that's what it looked like. I didn't get to look into it, but she has like a couple things where, you know, like Black Sheep podcast and
Did you notice the section under the audacity of Obama? I think that was chapter 6. And he talked about the black mayors and the rise of the black mayors, and didn't go into any detail about how the black mayors presided over the gutting and the utter misery.
No, of course.
Homicide.
No, but Diallo, you skipped over the worst part. The worst part of the chapter. The worst part of the chapter is that he starts off by using one of my favorite scenes to go in a very wrong direction politically. When he uses that scene from The Good Shepherd that I used to play in the audio clip on my radio show, where Joe Pesci tells him, you know, the niggas have jazz and the Jews have their this and that, and what do you white folks have? And Matt Damon tells him, we have this country and the rest of you are visitors. What he does wrong with that is that to your point of a minute ago, Diallo, is the state's expression of that not afraid of you white boy.
Right.
That's the white boy telling you, I'm not afraid of you. Like we have the state. We have the CIA and the FBI and all the everything else and the NSA. I'm not in the military. I'm not worried about you running around here talking about there's going to be more of you. You know, there's always more of you, motherfucker. That's the whole point. Like, we're used to that. So anyway, he already goes up, but he has to set that up so that he can talk about, of course, playing on Obama's title himself, you know, audacity of hope, but to make the point that Obama's presence was somehow audacious, was somehow some black power, as he said, somehow some glitch in the Matrix. No, that was the Matrix. He didn't say that.
Paying homage to black politicians while not really getting into any black policy. Just having a black person presiding over the empire is somehow enough. And just with the black, because we're entering, some could argue, a new phase of black mayors and prominent black mayors like we had in the 70s and 80s. And, you know, growing up under the first black mayor of Kansas City, who is now a congressman. But growing up, and we were losing ground. We were being ravaged. I mean, the police got militarized under the black mayor. Black people lost so much ground. Even here in Chicago, there's this people are in awe of Harold Washington. Everywhere I go, I see monuments and shrines to Harold Washington. And as if these black mayors, like Harold Washington's political slogan was, he's going to be more than fair, meaning he's not going to in any way upset the status quo or take resources from any other group to give resources to black people, as if he didn't come into the mayorship of a city that had for generations been taking resources and denying resources to the black community. He in no way sought vengeance or justice or balance, but he was going to be more than fair to the known enemies of black people. So it's just, he's selling.
Look at what he does
bread.
here. And I need to remember to put the link in the show description. But if you go back and look at my interviews with Tom Porter, about who was involved in Jesse Jackson's first presidential campaign, and we did an interview a couple years ago comparing that campaign to the Bernie Sanders campaign. And one of the many points that Porter makes in that was that he said it in a funny way. He said that Jesse Jackson was doing the right thing with his initial campaign until he thought he could actually win. Then he started messing with the politics. But his point was, and this is why I think what Roland Martin does here is again very telling of Martin's class politics, is that Porter's point was that Jesse started off with a legitimate insurgent, electoral, political, real rainbow coalition, radical, blah, 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 blah kind of vibe. But what Martin says is that Obama's successful run in election was a radical juxtaposition to the 1984, 1988 campaigns of Reverend Jackson. And what he ultimately means, Martin does, because he doesn't go to the politics and the policy that Diallo's talking about. He talks about the aesthetics and the way Jesse Jackson was more easily dismissed as a backwards country buffoon, whereas Obama was this well-coiffed, Harvard, well-spoken, as Biden said at the time, if people remember, he speaks well. In other words, that Obama not only won, but he was somebody who was unassailable in the same way by white folks, and that's what made him such a threat. So again, he can reduce power and threat in politics to some aesthetic, symbolic presentation devoid entirely of policy, politics, ideology, class, etc., and so forth. I mean, it's quite remarkable what he does here, and only were there people positioned even on his own network who were smart enough and well experienced enough in the history to explain this to him, But unfortunately, apparently we have to do that here. So I'm just saying, so it's very slick because again, Obama is the radical success story that has produced all of this for the first time ever, white backlash.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say they gave us all bricks of hope. Amos always talk about like both of them ran on a campaign of hope. You don't get water, you don't get clean water, don't get clean air. You just get some hope.
Well, actually, I took time. I'm ashamed to say, after years of mocking Jesse Jackson, run Jesse run, I actually took time to read his policy platform a few years ago, and it was very progressive. I mean, it was on some Bernie Sanders level of democratic socialism, but it was everything from labor rights and support for labor to universal health care. I mean, it was an extremely progressive platform. So Obama was a departure because Obama was a neoliberal and this meritocracy bullshit that the neoliberals push. He was basically a clone or a mimic of the Clinton administration. And I tell people all the time, remember the Republicans went batshit crazy because the Democrats stole their platform. And so Bill Clinton put the Democrat, basically the Republicans put the Democrats in a position of either when the Republicans were the party of Lincoln and the abolitionist party, the Republican Party was the party that had all the Negroes because the Republican Party was the social justice party. And then the Republicans say, listen, we're going to go all in with corporations. And so the Democratic Party was the party of the Confederacy. And they were like, well, they're pretty much taking taken over our constituency, so we could either move to the left or the right or fuse our parties. And so the Democrats decided under FDR to move to the left, since the Republicans had pretty much moved to the right. And then in the early 90s, after the Reaganism, that same juxtaposition was presented to the parties, where the Republicans, because look at everything from NAFTA, CAFCA, mass incarceration, the Bill Clinton administration and the Democratic Leadership Council completely took over and stole the entire platform of the Republicans. And the Republicans said we could either move to the left of the Democrats, we can fuse our parties into a one-party mega party, or we can go to the right of the Democrats. And so that's why the Republican is an ultra-right party, because of the Democrats, and the Democrats pushed them to the far right. And they didn't want to do what the Democrats did and jump to the left.
Right.
So
y'all kind of touched it on it, but I don't know if we went into it. But what were y'all thoughts about how he talked about the weaponizing of working class and the statements he made about Bernie, his criticism of Bernie and identity politics?
Bernie went too far, because remember, he says Stacey Abrams led a radical, election. So again, Bernie has to, as he says, one of the biggest criticisms of Senator Bernie Sanders was how he used the phrase working class. While it sounded fresh to new millennials and Gen Z voters, Bernie was essentially voicing the same rhetoric centered around whiteness. When Bernie kept saying we've got to target the working class, ask yourself, is the working class about income? Is the working class based on industry and employment? Is it based on location? Because if you actually go back and look at the numbers, most working class Americans did not vote for Donald Trump. And that's when he goes in to talk about how most of them voted for Hillary Clinton. For example, in 2016, Hillary Clinton earned more votes from the working class voters than Trump, further illustrating that Democrats still have a healthier stronghold on working class Americans overall.
I don't think.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just don't think that was a fair criticism, because if you have to tie his rhetoric to his stated policies and his stated agenda. So, a lot of Republicans and Democrats give lip service to the working class, the salt of America, as Sarah Palin called them, real Americas, and that rhetoric. But if you look at the policies of Hillary, the policies of the Clinton administration, Hillary and her husband, if you look at the platform of Sarah Palin and John McCain, their policies did not align with their rhetoric. So you can say when they were saying the what they call false progressive or right-wing progressivism or whatever. So when Bernie was saying the working class, he meant low to middle income people. Because if you look at his policies that from the BernieSanders.com and Bernie, what was it, Bernie 2020 or Bernie 2016, he was talking about income and class. It was more of it wasn't just rhetoric or empty rhetoric or a code word for white middle America. That's just not consistent with the policies he's historically pushed or policies that he intended to advocate or advance if he was elected. Before the Democrats unseated him and undermined him, his own party did. The Republicans never defeated Bernie.
Mm-hmm.
So, Geechee, I don't know how you read that question, but as I go back and just look at it very quickly, the section where he brings up Bernie, I'm not entirely sure what he's meaning to do. That is Martin, but it seems what I think he was doing there is saying that by Bernie Sanders not addressing himself to the specific needs of black people, the phrase working class allowed for the right wing to capture the phrase, claim it for themselves, and in other words, what I think it is I think it's him making a class-based critique of Bernie using identity politics. If I'm saying, in other words, Roland is saying Bernie messed up. But he's not saying he messed up by going too far to the left, because then Roland would have to expose himself. So he's saying Bernie messed up by not clarifying that working class was not just white people. That working class was white people, but not just white people, and that allowed for the white right to take credit, as Trump did, for the white working class, even though more of them voted for initially the Democratic Party. That's what I think he's trying to do there. It's like a slick little, I don't know, it's like a slick little, I don't want to come right out and say Bernie's too far left. So I want to get rid of Bernie and his left-leaning politics by saying he didn't do enough to specifically address himself to the white fear of his own community. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's a short section. Because what he's saying is, he's not saying my criticism of Bernie was how he used the phrase working class. He's saying one of the biggest criticisms of Bernie was how he used the phrase working class. While it sounded fresh to new millennials and Gen Z voters, Bernie was essentially voicing the same rhetoric that centered around whiteness.
That just doesn't hold water, because again, white people are well known for using dog whistles and code words. Urban is a code word for black. Like I said, Sarah Palin and John McCain started using real America and the real Americans as a code word for whites, but you see it reflected in their policy and their long political history. I mean, when Bernie was talking, Bernie is a progressive. You can maybe call him a leftist, but not really. He hasn't governed as a leftist all the time, even though his rhetoric is leftist. But as a true democratic socialist or a liberal, a true liberal, not a neoliberal, you could see when he was talking about working class, the policies that he wanted to invent. He's talking specifically, it's not a code word for white. It is an actual acknowledgement of the working low to middle income people, because even in his speeches he would talk about how wages have been suppressed while profits have not, as profits have gone up, wages have been going down, when it used to be prior to the 70s, as profits went up, wages went up, and job security.
But we're not being fair to Roland here, because in his book he's not looking to perform an analysis of Bernie and Bernie's politics. He's only making a reference to Bernie to use the phrase working class power or working class to make a point that most of the working class is white, and most of them voted with their whiteness and voted for Trump. So he's not, the section where he's talking about this, Martin, he's not even, I think all of us are doing too much in trying to assess what he's trying to do with Bernie, because he's ignoring Bernie. He's only saying that when Bernie doesn't identify the working class as majority white and doesn't identify the racial breakdown of it, it misrepresents what the working class is. So then the rest of that section is Martin talking about that the working class is white, and most of them voted for Trump.
That's a pot shot. Yeah, that's a pot shot, and
right.
Most of the that's just a little pot shot. But in reality, is someone using working class as a dog whistle, or using working class as an understanding of class divergence within society? He didn't. The working class, where he talked about middle America, rural America versus urban. If you use working class to separate people of middle America from the educated people, is different than using working class to separate what high income earners and owners of the means of production from the workers and the laborers who create the wealth that the elites steal. So,
but from Roland's perspective,
unnecessary pot shot.
But from Roland's perspective, if you look carefully at what happened to Bernie within the Democratic Party, then you would have to recognize and come to terms with the conservative politics of the Democratic Party and why they pushed Bernie out. So in other words, he's trying to make it seem like Bernie messed up by not clarifying his working class politics, when the reality is Bernie messed up by caving in and quitting when he should have pushed the issue in the second election, as far as he could get it to push the contradictions, but he wasn't really there to do that. So he can't. But Martin is really just trying to say that the white working class continues to scapegoat black people when they should be focused on the conservative politicians that keep them poor. And instead of saying, well, Bernie was trying to bring in those white working class people to support him, to pull them away from the Republican Party by not identifying them along terms of race, instead of doing that and assessing and critiquing that, Martin just says, no. Bernie messed up. White working class is scared, and that's why they voted for Trump. And that's why we have to vote even harder for Biden and his like in going forward. That's why I think So
and when
that's it.
And when you're talking about working class, you're engaging in identity politics, according to Roland Martin, or according to the white people that he's quoting.
I think what Martin is saying is that the conservative whites would dismiss any reference to race as identity politics, but what he's trying to point out, that is Martin, is that the working class is majority white, and it is fearful. So by Bernie not identifying that white fear and by focusing on class, he messed up. That's how I interpret that. So that Martin can say, because Martin's point is not a class argument, he's avoiding class altogether. So he's saying it's a racial argument exclusively. White folks are scared. Bernie, referring to them as white working class, ignores their racial fear, and we have to not run from identity politics, but embrace it. But in what I would consider to be a conservative, reactionary embrace of identity politics, and then so that he can come back to his thesis, which is Martin's thesis, which is white folks go have a conversation with each other. And get over your fear, because it's you have no choice, and the rest of us who are now a majority in this country can continue doing what we're doing because we're now in power.
Can we jump to the last the outro?
Sure.
And what he called the new American world order?
Yes.
The new American world order. And
yes,
I've always said this, that a lot of these prosperity politics, whether it's FBA or ADOS, or whether it is the status quo, I call people like Roland Martin status quo Negroes, the Black Democratic Party establishment, that they would have no issues with the ongoing imperialism, the ongoing ecosystem ravaging and omnicide and ecocidal policies. They just want their cut of the spoils. They want their cut from the spoils of empire. And just the fact that you would even imagine or speak positively of an American world order, why would the United States, what gives the United States a right to establish a global order when it's only a small nation of 300 million, when you have nations of over 1 billion citizens and 1 billion subjects of some of these more oppressive nations?
But Diallo, he's answering you right on the screen. He's saying white America has to figure out how it operates a world it doesn't completely control. So so it doesn't control it anymore, Diallo. It's over. You didn't. I mean, and the white folks have to get the memo. Their control is over.
It's the
white people have to
racial
allow
thing he was talking about, though,
to share in the control. It's not ending U.S. imperialism. He's not talking about ending U.S. industrial capitalism.
We are post-race and post-imperialist, according to him. Post-imperialist.
Where do you see post-imperialist?
That's what he's pretty much saying.
Look at the page. No longer being a white majority nation forces us also to see nations in South America and the Caribbean outside the lens of colonialism. Because clearly those brown and black majority countries are outside the lens of colonialism.
Where does he talk about? He said, see them out. Did it say ending colonialism? Where's
it's over?
Where?
Diallo.
No, he's not calling for an end. He's calling for black people taking the reins, like Obama. He supports Obama.
But the only way you can do
Obama
that.
did more to advance the war on terror. Obama did more drone bombing than Bush.
Listen,
Obama opened up more theaters.
But that's because he was presiding over what was still a white majority. That's the difference, Diallo. That white majority's gone. So now it's good.
Black on black.
Yes, but what I'm saying is that's the only change. It's more black people doing white shit than white people doing white
But
shit.
Diallo,
that's the point.
But Martin's point is that is the only change that is necessary. You keep talking about this other shit.
Listen,
you keep talking about this other shit.
And that's
listen, that man said what he said. You want to change it? Go on the show and talk to him.
Look, they never had to factor in how racism in America is viewed abroad and couldn't handle it when people around the world aligned with Angela Davis when she was on trial. See, he's even talking about Angela Davis. They never considered the third stanza of the Star Spangled Banner. Now he's even stealing the stuff that I got from Brother Sundiata years ago about the third stanza of the, so it's over though, is his point. It's over.
He wants to desegregate. What he's arguing for here is black people that play a greater role, a larger proportional role in the U.S. empire and the U.S. corporatocracy. He wants more black people in positions of power to do the identical same thing that white people in power do, because that's what Obama did, and he praised Obama. So he wants more black people to go to HBCUs to get economics degrees in order to further shore up global capitalism. He wants black people to go to HBCUs and get STEM degrees to advance and work within the surveillance state. He wants more black people to go to HBCUs and get economics and law degrees and become elected officials and advance the U.S. empire. And we can go look at it outside of a colonial lens. But where does he talk about anywhere about retracting the U.S. military, closing U.S. foreign military bases, giving back resources, the end of exploitation of the resources of the Caribbean and the so-called third world? Where does he in any way suggest that when black people become a majority, or when white people no longer are the majority population, aside from them having to share power and resources with the non-white citizens of the U.S., where does he suggest that the U.S. changes up fundamentally, materially, its relationship to the rest of the world? He wants a new American world order when there should be no American world order.
No, he said in his last section, which is the white American agenda, the white agenda, that we need more John Browns. So there's your material distribution. There it is. In all seriousness, go ahead, man. Yeah, go ahead.
He literally described what he meant. He didn't want white people to take up arms against other white people. He meant that he wanted white people to have a discussion and to convince other whites who are resistant to this black and brown tide, this tide of white minority, this impending white minority status that by John Brown, he meant discussions for them to convince their people to accept their new minority status in the U.S.
Let's be clear. He said we need more John Browns. If you're a white person living in suburban America and you don't see a lot of black people in your neighborhood and your kids don't have to play soccer or play a clarinet with a black kid, what are you supposed to do? So he's telling them, you're supposed to pick up guns and go shoot.
He's just that's called name dropping. He just that's name dropping.
He said the white soccer parents supposed to look up and say, where the black kids at? Oh, get the gat, click clack.
And hey, it's not as though white folks ain't already doing that. It ain't as though white folks ain't going out in blazes of glory all over Middle America.
Oh my God, man!
There's been 260 mass shootings in the United States. That's more than a mass shooting a day. So, I mean,
look, they have to remove themselves from their whiteness. And
Roland Martin might be onto something.
Wait, are you serious?
John Browning?
He was executed 163 years ago today. Do you know in undergrad, I went to the library at Frostburg State University one day and I read his entire trial in transcript and even his statement to the court. Because I remember I was like, was he really as crazy as everybody said he was? And when you read, he was clearly not crazy. And the only thing I remember from his statement was he said, "I knew you're gonna kill me anyway, but I'm just gonna go ahead and let you know that I was right." But anyway, shout out to John Brown. Took my daughter to Harper's Ferry. We went over there on way back from a soccer tournament. Speaking of soccer parents, and let me tell you something: soccer parents are not going to pick up guns if there are no black kids. They're going to pick up guns if there are more black kids. If more black kids show up,
white folks are shooting each other up. I don't know really what their rationale is, but
look, I know we got to come to a close here. So let me just say, if you all have any final thoughts on the book, please share them. But I thoroughly appreciate. I had a good time. I did read. I saw one of the questions was asking if I had read the whole book. And I did read, I read it quickly, but I did read basically the whole thing. It's not a tough read. It's not that long. It's not intellectually, challenging. And I had a couple long flights last week. So I did, so I'm glad, so to answer Geechee's question of a little while ago, some value to the book is that we got to have a good conversation, a good show about it, had a good time with it. So, I'm just saying, I know eventually I got to go do other things. And I am now on my final deadline. I'm coming up on my New Year's Eve deadline for the second edition of the Buying Power book. So hence my inspiration, self-inspiration. So I do have to do some work. There is a semester closing up, I do have a job.
You're gonna have to hurry and put that book out for Jamila Hill. She take over the whole conversation. So
yeah, I saw your post where she was asking about black businesses. Whatever fantasies I might have about the work I do, it is sometimes frustrating to see the lack of impact. It is. I have to admit, sometimes it's like, damn. It's like, man. But the power of the propaganda, is strong. So very quickly, and I see you all. Thank you. Look, the announcement, and I was even trying to wait to see. I was told early December, and I know December 2nd counts, and I'm as impatient as anyone, but I have not been given clearance. Nothing has been produced. I'm even checking the email up till there was a little movement on it. I had some hope that I would be able to make the announcement. I'm very excited about it and honored and looking forward to sharing it. But I gotta wait. I still gotta wait. I'm even looking right now. There's nothing. There was another email, in the process that came yesterday, and I'm always first to respond. I'm like, let's move the process along. Like, I'm not holding it up.
Listen,
but
look, Roland Martin made us wait for this book, Jared. So don't.
He sure did, man.
He kept
make
saying,
us wait a little longer. Yeah.
We kept saying we're gonna wait, and then here it comes and this shit.
And yeah, we. It's so anyway, I have to continue to tease it out, but I haven't been given permission to share. Another thing that I am looking forward to sharing also is, and shout out to Dr. Orasami Burton, sent me some more on his research on Dhoruba. I can't wait. I think we have to wait till next month for that too. But to have him come on and I'll say this much. When people tell me I'm wrong about, any publicity is good publicity, and at least people will follow up with the story. I have more evidence for my side that this don't work, and from Dhoruba's own penned hand, I can't. So when we get the clearance to share that, when I look forward to doing that as well. Dr. Burton is doing some great research on Dhoruba and unearthing some hilarious and deep documents, some of which we've already shared here, specifically the one where the dude said, the prison psychologist or whatever said that Dhoruba is fascinating, smart, engaging, and therefore terrifying, and that his life should be turned into a watered down HBO drama. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Anyway, fellas, anything you want to share with us before we get out of here? Wrap it up for the morning. And thanks again for another great discussion on a Friday morning.
I just want to encourage Black people to change the nomenclature. Stop, watering down white atrocities. Stop talking about white privilege, white fragility, white fear, and call it what it is. White aggression, white pathology, white genocide. I don't understand how these people can dominate the global economy, and a race of people who are literally engaged in destroying the life-sustaining capacity of the earth. And when aliens come back here and look at how their victims describe them, we're talking about their fear and their fragility and their privilege, as opposed to their hyperaggression, their pathology, and their murderous intent. So I just wish at very nothing, if nothing else, as Roland Martin works to reintegrate us and desegregate us again for the umpteenth time, to reinstitute affirmative action and all this other shit that failed miserably. Can we at least call a spade a spade? That's all I ask. Let's call a spade a spade. I don't know what the white version of a spade is. Call a cancer cell a cancer cell.
So for me, I think this reminds me of the conversation with Netfa when Diallo was saying like imperialism, these things are not on the ballot, like you're not voting for that. But I think Roland is a perfect example of somebody who's telling you to get to the ballot box, but also writing fantasies that we living in a post white hegemony or white imperialism. We living in that post reality, in his words. So although it might not be word for word on, policy or ballot box, it's like a lot of things are insinuating that we living in a post-imperialist society, and it will convince Black people to participate in the destruction of the planet and celebrate, Black excellence. So you have sisters going to MIT designing nuclear bombs to kill other Black people. So I think it's definitely connected, and Roland is one of the
creating the vibranium finders.
Hey, these sisters are real out here. I mean, they just celebrated one last Marina Robinson, and powerful, smart sisters. But
this was my initial thought about Roland's book, was that it was Frances Cress Welsing and Cheikh Diop without the science, the data, or any radical analysis. Anyway. But all right, fellas, and I appreciate you again, and thanks to those who joined us here live. Please do continue to support the channel, and the links to Brother Diallo and Geechee's platforms are in the show description, as is much more. Please check that out. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. If you were not able to participate live in the chat, it's likely because you have not been subscribed long enough. So go ahead and correct that so you can participate as soon as possible. And look forward to more. Be back Monday with Ricky Ryan, Sister Erica Keynes, and Dev Springer to talk about hashtag activism, the latest I believe still the latest in Hood Communist, or some recent Hood Communist publication and related issues. And stick around. You never know what's going to happen in between. So make sure your bells and whistles are all selected. Fellas, everybody, thanks. To you we say peace, like Fred Hampton used to say, because we know you're willing to fight for it. Take care, everybody. See you next time here at I Mix What I Like.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.